Hi there, Nigel Saunders here. Welcome back for part 2 of preparing my trees for our club bonsai show this year. Thanks for dropping in to the Bonsai Zone. Today I'll be starting on my medium leaf size Ficus benjamina. In the last video that featured this tree, I did a lot of moss pruning and a lot of pruning up top on the canopy. One of the features of a mature ficus tree is you get this nice rounded canopy on top. That's kind of an umbrella shape. Last time when I pruned the upper canopy, I just did a hedge type pruning to prune the canopy roughly to shape. This time, because the club show is so close, I'll have to go in carefully and prune between the individual leaves to restore my rounded shape on top. I have a lot of new growth that's come in since I pruned it last, and some of it's shot up with more vigor than others, so I'm just going to kind of equalize that vigor, keeping some of the new growth, but not all of it. Branches like this that are sticking up out of the profile, I can prune back to an outward facing leaf, trying to keep as much ramification as possible. I've got the canopy pruned to its rounded shape now. I didn't take a whole lot off, I just tried to take as little as possible. There's a shot of the amount of foliage I removed, so I just removed the little tips sticking up, just enough to get the rounded shape back. My goal for this tree is to grow this branch structure out into the profile of the canopy, and then to counteract that branch down low here coming into the canopy, I have a branch back here that is also does the same function. So we've got the upper canopy here, this branch and this branch. So I think this branch would look better if it was positioned a little wider. Sort of like that, to sort of mimic the movement of this branch on this side. So I think we're going to have to do a little bit of wiring. I'm going to anchor my wire at the junction of these two branches. So we'll wrap the end around this branch as a supporting branch. There. So that's anchored now, and then I'll run my wire out here. And trying not to damage any branches in here. Alright, we're getting out towards the tip now. And I'll run it up in between the end branches and end my wire there. I've got the wire on, and you can see just the extra length of wire has put enough weight to the branch that it's moved into the correct position. So I'm going to trim that wire off and position the branch now. I'll cut the extra length of wire off to right here. And then I'll make sure the branch is in the right position. I want to match the angles. At the back of the tree, there's also a branch here that's growing almost parallel to the main trunk here. So that also needs to be wired out a bit. I've got the wire anchored down below, and I'm just feeding it up to the top of the branch here. I'm almost done. And I can end my wire there. So I'll just trim the end of that wire off close to the tree here. There we go. We're still looking at the back of the tree, so now I can position my branch to fan out from the main trunk. To about there. After moving some of these branches slightly with wire, I'm going to have to go in and restore my rounded shape on the canopy. Just do a little more pruning. So my next task will be to go into the tree and look for branches that have died back or branches that are crossing in bad directions that aren't fanning out from the tree, and just doing a general structural cleanup. There's a branch here that's died off, probably didn't get enough light, so I'm going to clean that up, pruning it right back to the main trunk, like that. There's some cleanup work I can do on this branch down here. There's a dead part here that I got to remove. Yeah. I'm always trying to decide if I should keep this lower branch or not. I think if I got rid of it, there'd be too much trunk and not enough foliage on the tree. So I kind of like this branch here. It kind of, I don't know, it looks good with the trunk, I think. So I'm going to keep it. I'm just going to prune it up a bit. I've got that branch all pruned up now. I may get rid of the back branch eventually on it as this fills out more, but for now I'll keep it. There's an overall shot of the tree now. I think in future this bend in the trunk will smooth out slowly as the tree grows more. We'll get our canopy wider each side. And yeah, I think it'll slowly improve this tree over the years and become a really nice ficus tree eventually. So the next step, I want to clean up some of the moss down below. The moss looks really good. It's not a bad height. It's a little high in the front here. It kind of bulges up and then goes flat. So I think this part of the moss is where I remove the moss totally away from the root base. And this is the moss I left, and it's growing thicker, and this is filled in nicely. So I'm going to prune this ridge of moss at the front anyway. I'll leave it long at the back. At the front so you can see the roots from the side view of the tree more. With my curved surgical scissors, I'll just come in and prune the tops off the moss here. And I want to keep it green, so I don't want to go too far down. If you go too far down, it starts getting into the brown layer of moss. So that's why I did all that pre-pruning earlier in the year. Looks like I can go down quite far and the moss is still green. I've got a few tufts of Irish moss growing in here, and normally I would remove those, but they look kind of good. They look like little bushes you'd see in a rainforest or something. So I'm going to leave them in for now, and then as soon as the show ends, I'm going to pull them out because they spread like crazy and they're nasty stuff. So I'm going to leave them in for now. I am going to clean up the roots a bit. I'm going to pick off some of the moss that's growing around the root base just to clean it up. You can see this root here is covered in moss, but not too much. The moss is looking pretty good the way it is. I'm just picking that moss off with the tweezers. The last step for this tree will be to give it a general wash and clean up. Some of the older leaves have a lot of debris on them from being in the greenhouse, spider webs and stuff that's fallen down. So I'm going to give all the leaves a clean with a toothbrush and water. So we'll just come in, spray the leaf, and give it a polish. So the leaves look nice and clean. That looks better. I'm almost done the tree. I got all the foliage cleaned up and looking good. The last thing I want to do is the pot and the moss around the lip of the pot. This is a plastic pot, and at the moment it looks like a plastic pot. So the first thing I want to do, I want to clean up all the moss. You want to be able to see the whole lip of your pot. You don't want moss overhanging the edges like over here. It's not overhanging by much on this, but just enough to, you know, spoil the edge of the pot. For this, I'll be coming in with my scissors and just pruning the moss away from the edge of the pot. I just cut along the lip of the pot here, the inside lip, and then you just brush away the moss that's overhanging. And then I like to blend in the edge so you don't get that line where you just pruned. Just like that. The next step is to clean up the edges of the pot, so I'll just use water and my toothbrush. I got as much discoloration off as I could get with a toothbrush, and now I'm going to come in with some steel wool, or in this case bronze wool, and just scrub the rest off. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, it looks much better. The edge of the pot is looking good now. But now I've got to address the front of the pot. It's got all these scratches in it. So I want to do the same thing. I want to get my steel wool and just remove all the scratches and discoloration. My next step is to get out the artist's oil colors and find a darker color than my plastic pot, but one that tones well with it. I'm going to try burnt sienna. I'll just put it on a pad of tissue paper, and then I'll start rubbing it into the pot. I think it's actually working better smearing it in with my finger. I finished applying the oil paint to the pot and to my hands. They may be permanently a burnt umber color, I don't know. The next step, to give the pot a bit of a shine, we're going to put some mineral oil on it. Too much mineral oil, it'll look too shiny. Too little, it'll look too dull like it is now. It's a flat color. So I'm going to put a bit of mineral oil on this rag, and we'll just try a little bit more dabbing, and I think that's going to do it. Here's a final look at the medium leaf ficus benjamina, all pruned up and ready for the show. The next tree I'll be working on is my little tiny jade tree. In the last video on this tree, I pruned all my growing tips in order to get subdividing and new little tiny branches and leaves growing in. And it worked well on some of the growing tips, but ones like right here, I pinched the tip and nothing grew. This one here, I pinched the tip and I only got one branch coming out instead of two. Some of the tips were quite successful in getting two sub-branches coming off. So I think I'll have to leave the foliage that's on it. I'll just remove some of the larger leaves that are crossing the design and just do a general cleanup. There's one here that can be removed. Like that. There's one growing towards the center of the tree I can remove here. I can remove this one. And I think I might have to leave that one. No, I can get rid of that one. There's one on the inside here I can remove. There's one on the inside here I can remove. Another one here. And one here. And one going from here. I can remove this one and this one. And one back here. And that might be about it. That tidies the foliage up top. Now let's go down and look at the moss. The moss isn't very long. If you see my finger beside it, it's very short. But the shorter I get this moss, the larger the tree will look. So I'm going to come in and prune the moss. I'll use my curved scissors. That's about as close as I can get the moss. And then I'll just give the moss a brushing, get rid of all the pieces I cut. I'm standing back looking at the jade in the pot here, and I think it's moved over to the right too far in the pot. It looks like it's kind of too close to the edge of the pot. So I want to counteract that by placing something here. I could place a stone or an animal or anything. So I looked around and I found a cheetah that I really like with it. If I place him or her right there, I think it really gives the feeling of, you know, a giant jade tree in Africa. Not real giant, but pretty big for a jade tree. So I like that. It gives it a sense of scale and it gives it a landscape. So there we go. That's the jade all prepared. for the show. The next tree I'll be working on is my bird's nest spruce. The sedum I planted around this little spruce has grown really long. I've already pruned it once since the last video, so it definitely needs doing again. This tree's been sitting out on the bench for the summer, and you can see from the sedum here, it's growing aerial roots. Okay, so it's time to start pruning the sedum. I do like the sedum as a ground cover plant with your bonsai. I don't find it too hard to control as long as you do some maintenance on it and clean up all the bits you prune off so they don't root and grow more of them. I'm going to leave the front bush as it is for now. It's going to need some further pruning, but I want to get the one over on the left side pruned back also. I want to get it away from the base of the tree here. I've roughly pruned the sedum into 2 clumps on this side, and I think that looks better as a smaller clump. I think I'll do the same for this. I'll divide it so it's not one big massive clump. It's maybe some smaller tufts. I'm standing back now having a look at the tree, and I think it's looking pretty good. I can imagine a scale of the tree. I can imagine a person maybe this high walking around it. So all my moss in that is a little coarser than I normally keep it, but I like it. I like the little tufts. It looks very natural and rugged. It looks like a landscape you'd see up north. I've got a lot of buds in the canopy for next year, so when the tree's a little stronger, I'll start wiring some of these branches, giving them a little more weight, but I'm going to wait till next year till it gets a little stronger. That's all the work I'll do on the bird's nest spruce, so on to the next tree. For the next trees I'll be working on, we're going back to Africa to work on my elephant diorama. All is looking good with the elephants, but the sedum's grown long and needs pruning to make it look like bushes instead of ground cover. A lot of this sedum I'm just pulling out with my hands, pulling out the roots and all. It's grown too close to the trunk of this tree. I'm also going to clean up the pathway that the elephants use to get through here. It's getting a little narrow and overgrown. The pathway's looking better now. Everything's clear. So I'm going to put down the same red turfus that I got from the baseball diamond on the pathways in the ground to give it that red African soil look. So here I go. I don't have time for this to dry out because the club show is very soon. So I'm going to just be very careful how I put it on, and I'll have to use the toothbrush to kind of brush it off the moss. I won't be able to use the sprayer and wet it down. I'll get the toothbrush now and just brush the soil into the surface. I'm going to leave it a little rougher underneath the elephants so it looks like their footprints, so they're walking through the soil. The wooden frame that the seed trays are sitting in was sent in by Angel, so I want to thank him again. And I think that's all the work on my elephant diorama for today. I could spend hours going in and detailing it more and having lots of fun with it, but I'm running out of time, so I got to go on to my next tree. The next tree I'm going to bring is my aloe bonsai. I'm going to bring it just because it's so unusual and it's looking really alien, I guess is the word. It looks like something from a different planet. So there's not much work to be done on it. I'm just going to leave it as it is and bring it to the show. The last tree I wanted to work on before the show is my Avatar Grove. This is styled after the newly discovered grove near Port Renfrew in British Columbia, Canada. This grove is quickly becoming one of my favorite plantings. I like the tall look of the forest. The only problem is I've run out of time to work on my trees. I have to go off to the bonsai show. So I'm going to bring the grove along with me, and if there's nothing to do at the show, I'll do some work on it. I'll weed it and try and get it looking really nice. I've got to get all my trees loaded in the car now and head off to our bonsai show. That's all for today's video. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.